Hey, so let's offend everybody by talking about the topic of transsexuality. And most people who will be offended will not even be trans, because for some reason, people who are not trans think more of trans people than trans people do. Or something like that. So we're of course gonna discuss, or, well, not discuss because it's just a monologue, but I want to talk about how I think we should treat trans people professionally, as in how the government and the state should treat them and how the law should treat them. Yeah? So let's go. First of all, we have to identify what is transsexuality and what is a medical condition. Well, being trans is, well, it's being born not comfortable in your own body. It's where you identify more with the opposite sex. And throughout this video I'll be using male to female as my example. So you're born with a penis, but you wish you had a vagina, big tits and a nice butt. Right? You wish you were female, essentially. And so this occurs actually because there is no God, and while in the womb you develop your brain and your genitalia at separate points, and so sometimes it gets switched, it gets flipped. You get the wrong brain, or perhaps the wrong body, depending on how you view it. And I'm gonna guess why transsexual people's brains are slightly different from both genders when they get older. It's probably because the hormones of the body will be male, but the brain is female, and the female brain is now trying to develop on male hormone levels, and that causes it to be somewhat different. But from what I know, when we do brain scans of people who are trans, their brains are more alike to the opposite sex rather than the same sex. And that's kind of interesting to know. So, do I consider it a medical condition? Yes, of course I do. I mean, there are kind of two types of medical conditions that I consider. Number one is you're born with it, so you have a genetic defect or just inherited something bad. Like for instance, the guy who can knock out his teeth and regrow new ones. That's a medical condition, but it's not a bad one, it's a good one. It's a very good trait, a good mutation. And many people think medical conditions are only bad, but that's actually a good one. And a bad one would be like having the HLA-27 gene that gives you inflammations in your entire skeleton. And that's of course very, very bad. But the other type of medical condition is when you experience something really tough, and certain genes in your body start turning on and off in different sequences, kind of like binary code on a computer, and this then leads to them having certain medical conditions like anxiety or depression or even worse things. So by these definitions I do still think trans people should be considered to having a medical condition. Maybe it doesn't fit into these two categories. Moment. Yeah, it's really hot, so the AC is running, but yeah, I do think being trans should be considered a medical condition simply because, well, you're abnormal, you're different from everybody else. And less than 0.3% of the population is actually transgender, or should we say uncomfortable in their own body. So, in order to find out how to treat the transgender person, we need to figure out how to treat the normal person, the average person, comfortable in their own body. Their gender and their sex are both the same. So, the baby is born. Penis, male. Vagina, female. It has both, well, hermaphrodite, pronunciations, whatever, hermaphrodite. Why is that hard to pronounce now? What the hell? But yeah, in which case, you do a blood test, and you see where are the chromosomes, and then it's like male, female. What if it had no genitalia? Again, check the chromosomes, male, female, there you go. Simple. And yeah, how many genders are there? 2. There's only 2. Fuck people who say there are more. But I'm willing to stretch for other. I'm willing to allow people to have other, but I'm not gonna change my whole life and expect 99% of the population to change for less than 1% of the population. I think restructuring 99% of society for the 1% is just wrong. But making them able to cater to the less than 1%, sure, that's something we can do. But anyway, what I think happens is that trans people don't really know they're trans until like a few years later, when they see the typical gender roles and what women usually like, what men usually like. and so they start to feel uncomfortable. And for my first transgender friend, out of the two transgender friends I've had in my life, the first one figured it out when she was 4 years old, more or less, that she was not comfortable in her male body and would rather be female, but she chose to live a male life up until her medication made her start growing boobs and made her naturally produce estrogen even though her body was male. And so she came out saying she had actually been transsexual for, well, almost 20 years, but she just acted like a male to not make any fuss about it for other people. And yeah, I thought she was a guy all along, but she took that opportunity with the side effects of her medication to actually swap into the gender she wanted to be. So yeah, that can happen. But what I think is that a person who thinks they are transsexual needs to actually go to a doctor, a psychiatrist, or whoever it is that can prove someone is trans, right? Then they get it diagnosed that this person is actually trans, and then then they can officially say they are transgender instead of like, I feel like I'm transgender. They could actually say, I definitely am, I have it on paper. But of course there are people who have a lot of stigma against trans people, so I get it if they don't want to be associated with any of that. But when it comes to biology and sex and whatnot, I still think, for instance, with gender bathrooms, sorry, you have a penis, go to the male one. You have a vagina, go to the female one, right? Penis, male. Vagina, female. I think society needs to treat trans people by the sex that they have, not by the gender, but by the sex. And maybe that's wrong, like maybe some people are gonna show an extreme picture like, hey, this person who looks 100% woman, you're telling them to use the male bathroom. Well, yeah, I suppose I am, although I don't really care for gendered bathrooms, so why not just have gender neutral bathrooms? I don't know why people are so afraid of seeing a penis or seeing a vagina. Like, just have gender neutral bathrooms and treat each other with respect. Like, Jesus, people, just be normal, please. However, on their passport it should be the same thing, that hey, you have a penis, male, you have a vagina, female. But once a trans person has had their sex change, then I think they should be able to actually come out and say that, hey, I am actually female, I have a vagina. And then they take that to wherever they get their passport renewed or changed, and their gender should then be changed from male to female. And that's actually something that I think makes sense. I think the only way to make trans stuff make sense is by treating it physically. Just treat them like, hey, sorry, officially, you are a dude. Or, hey, officially, you are a woman. Sorry. It's biology, and it's not gonna change unless you have an operation. And to me, that's what makes sense. But of course, privately, I have different opinions. Like if someone says, if someone says, hey, treat me as a female, then sure, I'll treat them as a female. If someone says, hey, treat me as a dude, sure, I'll treat you as a dude. I don't care if your voice is normal for the gender you want to be, or if it's abnormal. I mean, I've met like 4 trans people in total, 2 I'm friends with, and the other 2, one of them sounds like a woman, wants to be a woman. The other one sounds like a dude, but actually wants to be a woman. And for me, like, I think it's a dude that's speaking, but it's actually a female. And it's kind of strange that all trans people that I've met are male to female, all 4 of them. But of course I treat them as female because, hey, I'm not an asshole. I want to make people happy, I want to make people laugh, I want to make them smile. And that's how it is. But professionally, in the real world and with facts that we have to live by, that I'm sorry, we can't treat gender as a real thing. We gotta treat, sex, the genitalia. But yeah, just get gender neutral bathrooms and it's fine. And just try not to be dicks to each other, and we should be fine. And if someone misgenders you, then sorry, maybe dress even more like the gender you want to be identified as. I don't know. But lastly, I think professionally that trans people might maybe need to change, and not just society. Like, if you really want to be a woman, then I think you need to dress more like a woman, and you can't be mad at people for just accidentally gendering you wrong. Like how I misgendered this guy when I was younger, and he just had very, very female looking hair and extremely long hair. And I called her a she, and he got pissed, but you know, in the end that was his decision to have really long hair. So maybe he just should have changed. I don't know what he should have changed, like wearing more male clothing, not having super long female looking hair, I don't know. But with trans people themselves, I think it's a medical condition and they gotta deal with that on their own in a sense. Like society can help to a certain degree. But mainly the person who needs to deal with the illness is the person who has the illness. Like me having Bechd's disease, I gotta pay people if I wanna move my bed that weighs 300 fucking kilos. Like I gotta deal with that, I can't just complain and expect to get everything for free. I can't expect to get help with everything. No. I can't expect everything to go smoothly. And I can't make my medical condition everybody else's problem. I might ask for help, I might request, please would anyone help me move this? But I can't ever demand and just yell at people for it. I think that's wrong. And I have seen trans people do that. I think that's wrong. I think you have a medical condition, you deal with it yourself the best way possible. And maybe ask about it, maybe talk to people about it, but never ever come with harsh demands and think that everyone should absolutely bend to your will. Just, yeah. So I think that's my professional opinion on trans people. Hope you enjoyed, hope you weren't too offended. See you next time. That was not the stop button.